Thanks for having me, Vinnie. I'm going to walk through a little bit about our Zoho Creator Platform that we got. My name's Tejas for everyone else. I've been at Zoho for like 10 years, but I'm going to try to break down what I want to talk about in a few different sections here. I'm just going to talk a little bit of history about Creator and kind of where we've been over the years, how we kind of see the market shifting a little bit. I'll highlight some new stuff that we got and then kind of just wrap it up with that. And so taking a step back a couple of years, I would say for the longest time, our mission has always been to empower everyone to easily build powerful applications. And so kind of a cliche theme line, I would say, but about 15 years ago in 2006, when we first started or first launched the Creator product, it was very, I would say, pre-online databases, one of the very first, and really around like online forums. And that's kind of the direction we were going in. But naturally, as the market evolves over the years, every couple of years, we kind of do a new milestone update. This is going to be the 6th major version that we have coming out here. But just evolving with the market, expanding it, and really just seeing as technology enables us to provide more capabilities to these developers in order to build things that they previously didn't think or didn't have the capability to build, has really been the core of the theme always through. But there's also been a little bit of a shift in terms of the adoption curve in terms of the Creator Platform specifically. As you know, historically, the Zoho brand has been extremely good with the SMB market, and that's been our big focus. But over the years, we've kind of seen a little bit more interest towards mid-market, I would say line of business IT teams getting more in the fray. And the SMB mid-market delineation is very tricky because everyone's either got a revenue number in their mind or an employee count in their mind. I don't really like to look at it that way, and that's not really how we like to approach things either. And so for us, I would say how we kind of define mid-market in terms of like relatability, I would say, is really along the lines of more kind of like IT maturity. Do people have a dedicated technology strategy? Is there a vision in place, dedicated IT team? That means they have mid-market levels of requirements and things that they need to get done. It could be a small 100-person company. It could be a 10,000-person company. Everyone's digital transformation journey is a little bit different, but how do you differentiate? You can't just say that because you make a bunch of money, that means you're technologically advanced or you have a good IT strategy. It doesn't always go hand in hand. So we like to just look at it from dedicated IT teams, have some sort of mandate for the organization. Those are people who are really leveraging low code the best, I would say. Some companies will have low code platforms, but maybe not a low code strategy. But we really want to focus on building a strategy within the organization to make sure that the adoption is successful within the organization. And the way that happens is in a couple of different ways. So organizations typically have these priority 1, priority 2. We've seen that a lot over the years with digital transformation overall, and especially over COVID. But we focus on kind of the basic requirements of just simply making information available and simply automating processes. But that's really just kind of converting an offline process into an online process. It's not really re-engineering the process to leverage all of the capabilities that the low-code platform can kind of offer. And so we'd like to focus on people really in that priority 3 group. I would say each one of these priorities, they kind of can be running in parallel within an organization, depending on the department, depending on the team and their immediate needs. But broadly speaking, we really want people to be building low-code first applications, not just barely dipping their toes into just digitally transforming themselves. And that's really where I think you might get the most advantages out of any kind of low-code platform, is when you start building for it rather than just a basic level replication. But we kind of know that with all these focus areas, there are some challenges within the organization that are just kind of getting worse, to be honest with you. IT overload really not going anywhere anytime soon. More and more demand for apps in order to increase efficiency of processes, either within a team or cross-departmental within an organization. Integrations have become even more important as there are more software solutions within an organization. Low-code apps have to be connected to these third-party solutions, whether it's your CRM, your help desk, your on-premise database, your cloud database, your finance applications, whatever it is, there's going to be some level of integration because that data is not in a low-code silo on its own. UI UX modernization, I think a lot of low-code vendors kind of shrugged this off a little bit as of late because the WYSIWYG editor has become so prominent in most low-code platforms. But ultimately, you have to still design a good-looking app in order to get good adoption from your users. We don't want the problem with like legacy apps that are extremely poorly designed and hard to work with, and broadly speaking, kind of ugly. They have to look good and feel good and be modern and just be consumer friendly in terms of their design capability. So we have to offer that kind of stuff. And the last and most underappreciated thing, but really I think what organizations care about the most and what's been holding back a lot of low-code adoption is the importance of compliance. And this is just because when you proliferate application development within an organization, you're opening up a can of worms in terms of security, in terms of compliance, in terms of data regulation, privacy regulation, regional regulations, all over the place, just all sorts of problems. So we got to be able to solve all these kinds of challenges in some way, shape, or form.
And on the UX side,
Mhm.
enterprises lag consumer for years now. And consumers already introducing voice, has been introducing voice.
Yeah.
Starting to hear about the metaverse and so on. So you're right. You can't ignore the UI UX. Otherwise, you'll be lagging, constantly catching up.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're not doing the metaverse isn't in our roadmap right now, but we'll see for the future.
let Zuck bleed on that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we know a little bit about challenges. Let's kind of just look about kind of market landscape broadly speaking. And this low code term overall, I think has been muddied a lot, just like SMB mid-market delineation, I guess. Everyone is a low code platform now. You have CRMs, a low code platform. You have help desk. Anything with a point and click configuration can now be technically considered low code. So we kind of look at this in one, it's good that the term gets popularized, but for low code application development platforms, they're generally split into these two buckets. I'd focus on citizen developer low code platforms. And so here you've kind of see we got a positive correlation between application complexity and how long it takes to build that application. And so they kind of just go up naturally over time, but you will see there is a big drop off because the more citizen developer oriented the platform is, you're always going to hit this, what we call a low code glass ceiling, where you can build an app to a certain level of complexity, and then it just doesn't have that extensibility in order to really take it to the next level or have some extremely complicated workflow or scenario workout.
Don't you also find CIOs tend to be a little suspicious of citizen developers? I mean, they trust some level of low code development, but they're always worried about what are we exposing the enterprise to?
Exactly right. And so that's why the shift goes to IT developers. And so this is platforms, maybe to name some names, I guess, OutSystems and Mendix are great leaders in this market, focusing on IT teams, extremely powerful, extremely capable platforms, but massive learning curve to get into it. The business user is not signing up or getting an account and within a matter of hours or days, building something functional and in deployment within their team to solve their immediate needs. It's, there's still a curve involved. Increases productivity for IT teams, but the business users maybe get that level of speed, but not necessarily. And what we try to do at the creator level is kind of be this Goldilocks approach of a best of both worlds. We want to be able to build the same level of complex applications that the citizen developers do, but at a faster pace. But we also want to make sure that the extensibility is there for IT teams to take advantage of more advanced technologies that they're familiar with, Java, Node.js, JavaScript designs, SDKs, APIs for whatever they want to. So there's a lot of developer-oriented features, but also point and click, low code, drag and drop features that the business users are doing. And the key really here is be able to let them work together, because the business users can build an app from maybe 0 to 5 or 0 to 8. But that last 20%, last 30% complexity or sophistication that's required can work in conjunction with the IT team in order to, or by allowing the IT team to pop in there and make whatever changes they need to, but still leave control and kind of ownership with the business users who are closest to the process, need to make the most amount of changes, and really are familiar with what it is that they're trying to solve. And so some of these apps are, I would say, long tail applications, situational applications that solve a short-term need, maybe a project, maybe some event or something that's going on. And then there's, let's say, mission critical applications. Mission critical apps, things that our organization is using org-wide, are going to be owned by the IT team more than likely, right? Or HR team, or whoever's actually running those types of org-wide deployments. But for inter-team, interdepartmental applications, ownership generally lies with those business users. I feel like you got something for me here.
Tejas, what are you finding people will use this to extend your applications or to build new applications? Do you have a
little bit of both, because at the end of the day, I think a good chunk of applications built on any low-code platform is kind of an extension of an existing system, because once you start integrating it, then you kind of are extending it to some extent. I guess extending could be interpreted a lot of ways, but broadly speaking, once you integrate any two things, it's an extension of one or the other, depending on whichever is a source of truth. But also building from scratch is kind of the key, just tapping into additional data sources. I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but it's kind of two sides of the same coin, in my opinion. And so trucking along a little bit, I talked about kind of this idea of building powerful applications, but we've seen this shift in terms of not just applications, but this term solutions and a unified platform. And so I'm going to break this down into a couple of different sections here. The build category, I think, is fairly, it's equal among most players. You have the capability to have structured data input, forms, reports, workflows, mobile capabilities, approval processes, all the basics of building a basic application are all in the build component. We've focused on that for the last 12, 13 years or so, really getting the creator build components on par or above par with basically industry averages, right? But the extension of solutions happens when we introduce things like integrations. Historically, most low-code vendors will have an integration platform they might partner with, or you might use a third-party integration platform. But because we know that low-code apps and integration platforms need to work together, we kind of see them as two parts of the bigger solution that organizations are building. And the third and the missing piece is really analytics. And so almost no real good low-code solution has analytics in it. They have reporting, but they don't have analytics. There's no additional intelligence or insights that can be drawn based on the data, just basic list reports and calendar reports and Kanbans. If you're lucky, you get some pivot charts or pivot tables, but you're not really getting any kind of analytics. And so we really see that the marriage of build, integrate, and analyze kind of being the key going forward for this low-code platform, where you might be using all three of them together. You might be using one or two of them at a time, but this is like the toolkit for a mid-market low-code platform, all in one solution, everything you need that developers can use, business users can use, everyone in between, varying technical levels. At the end of the day, we're all just enabling each one of them to be more productive by building something that's going to make their processes more efficient within their team or daily workflow. And we got a little bit on the, I would say, Zoho Advantage piece is building from the ground up. So we know that analytics, integrations, and building applications is important, and having them all on the Zoho stack obviously helps us a lot because they're on the same frameworks, they're on the same databases, there's no integrations or syncing required, just the inherent advantage of kind of just building everything from the ground up. We don't really have to worry about those kinds of connections that you do with third-party services. And so it's an added advantage if you're using Zoho business apps, but even just strictly from the creator platform piece and having analytics, integrations, and building together, it does help from a lot of different easing from management perspective in terms of compliance and security and all those kinds of things. I'm going to switch gears then a little bit and go into just a couple quick highlights of the creator platform itself. I could take 3-5 days probably to teach you everything about what we build, but I've kind of drilled it down to just some of the highlights that we've heard from our customers is the biggest impact in terms of capabilities that they see really improving their kind of workflows so far from the beta testers that we've been using or rolling it out with. And I'll focus on a few of these here. And so data preparation, process creation, and functions are the quick ones here. And so I've got this little video that kind of walks through data preparation, but a lot of mid-market companies don't have dedicated data preparation tools or data preparation teams. But we know that something like 85 to 90% of creator applications have spreadsheets imported into them. And so because of that, spreadsheets are still integral within the organization. That data is coming from somewhere and it needs to be inputted into the application. But like I talked about in the beginning, in terms of re-engineering a process for the low-code platform, that spreadsheet data structure is not identical to the data structure of a good application. That data models are going to be very different given the capabilities of both. And so what we really need to have happen is have that spreadsheet transformed into a data structure that matches the application that's been built. And so we've built this smart import, and importing is a very basic function. I think every low-code platform is going to have the ability to import from a spreadsheet, but intelligently importing it is a whole different level. So here we're able to identify every single field type, every single formula that's coming from Excel, every single lookup that's happening. We're able to create relationships across different workbooks, sheets, tabs in an Excel file, whatever the technical term is for it, and make connections across them. We're able to normalize the data, see data distributions, all sorts of analysis on the spreadsheet. And the key really here is once you kind of clean up this spreadsheet once, every subsequent import you do, we automatically just know, all right, you normally clean up this field. We're going to make sure that all of these names are matched up and standardized. And it makes this process insanely faster. Otherwise, people are doing this in Excel before importing into a spreadsheet every time. Something like 80% of creator applications have spreadsheets imported into them multiple times in their lifetime, which means that oftentimes you're just getting a dump from some third-party service and constantly importing it, but you're just mucking around with that data before it goes into the system. So we've kind of made a way to make it smarter, a smarter import that just is I would say a headache reliever for a lot of people, because this is a big pain point that a lot of people tend to have.
Is this designed only to import from a worksheet, to Excel worksheet, or could you apply it to other sources? You know, so
Other sources as well.
Other sources as well. Okay. Any? Okay.
So, I mean, we can bring it in from like JSON or Cloud CSV files, XMLs, wherever, in any sort of structured format of sorts, we'll automatically just tablize it, identify it, and then clean it up and do it that way. Yeah.
And what volumes are we talking about? Can it do a pretty big volume, or is it meant to be small data imports?
No, last I checked, I could double check a number for you, but if I was to get, I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, I was messing around with this and I had about 150,000 row Excel file that I was messing around with. I'm pretty sure it goes to about 250 confidently, maybe a little bit more, if not. I know like CSVs will go more than Excels or whatever.
Data conversion, right? Data conversion in an implementation where you could have 1 million master file records you wanted to pull in. This wouldn't be the right tool for that.
No, definitely not for like full-blown cleansing. It's more like partial additions to an application is probably the best way of going about it. Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit more simplified sense of that.
Yeah.
The next thing I'll hit on is kind of along the pain points of process modeling. And so we got an idea of what process modeling kind of is. You create some charts in a workflow type of situation. And historically, in the product, we have an event-driven workflow system. So anytime an action happens in the application, a component is loaded, a button is clicked, a record is saved, a field is updated, whatever, it'll fire off a workflow. And so you can kind of see it in this way. It works if it's a simple application, but as you can imagine, a complex app starts getting 100, 200, 500 different workflow actions based on different components being fired off. Very messy to kind of identify and organize this. We've done the best we could, but it's not really a process model. It's more of a list of workflows and triggers, and that's all you're really seeing. So we've kind of got this process modeler blueprint that we call it, that we've gotten a bunch of different Zoho applications at this point, CRM, Desk, a few others, and we're able to map out the process. Obviously, we can guide people through stages. We can control who can approve a record, who can not approve a record, when does it, what criteria is made before approval is done. And then after you transition from one stage to another, what actions do we want to have happen? Do we want to have a script fired off? Do we want to have an email sent, data updated in some way, shape, or form? But broadly speaking, an easy way just to see start to finish, what is the process of this application? What stage are we in? I would say right now, we're really just focused on the process modeling perspective, but later in the year, we've got this process optimization piece coming out where it's not just about being able to visualize and create a process, but you have to really see what are the bottlenecks in the process. At what stage is somebody taking too much time? If there's 2 approvers for a record and one of them averages 3 days and one of them averages 3 hours, can we call that out? If a stage is never being used in your process, then does that stage really need to exist? Or if you have a stage and all of these fields need to be there, can we enforce that? And so basically just making smarter processes rather than just mapping it. Mapping is, I would say the very first step in this, but a lot of potential in terms of just this mapping capability. But really, an app is only as good as a builder, but the process can get approved over time, which is what we really want to be able to do. Historically, people have been building out the
metrics you were talking about in the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
3 days, one person, 3 hours for another person. It must be collecting that in background, right? Or do you have to specifically ask it to track it?
You have the option of turning it on or off essentially at the beginning, right? So if people don't want the optimizations or the suggestions, that's cool. Let them turn it off and we won't collect anything. Okay. Otherwise, we can collect it. Some people were building out the functionality, basically tracking how long something would go from one stage to another, storing it in a different table and kind of scripting and kind of designing their own logging system for optimizations. But we've just kind of made it a little bit more native and then exposed it either as a component or, an API endpoint if they want to use it elsewhere as well. And then the last thing I'll talk about just on the or on the building side of things is workflows. And so when I talked earlier about that green sliver in that chart was about how low-code platforms for citizen developers typically have this like glass ceiling that applications can't get very complex from. And so, at a basic level, being able to work with the IT team is extremely important to add additional functionality. So a business user, for example, could build a very simple application like tracking visitors at your front desk. You build an app, very simple, maybe some forms that are collected. It prints out an ID card. You could probably build this in an hour, 2 hours tops on the Creator Platform. But whenever a visitor checks in, we want to apply a watermark to their profile picture that gets taken on the iPad. That's not something a low-code platform is ever going to do out of the box, watermarking, right? Because there's so many different versions of watermarking and customizations you can do. But the IT team can easily pop in a Java function, have that function executed based on field upload. And here you'll see this image basically gets a watermark applied to it automatically. Very small scale, simple example, but the IT teams know their languages. They're not wanting to get too detailed into the platform specific languages. So if they want to execute functions in Java or Node.js, eventually other languages as well, then they can write the function in there, drop in all the files, and all they need to know is the input and output and run with it that way. And everything else kind of gets taken care of. It's a black box for the business user, but all they have to do is tell the IT team, hey, can you write a function that adds a watermark to an image? Boom. And it's not, full-blown app development from the IT team. It's more kind of feature development rather than app development in order to enhance whatever it is that they're trying to do. And I'm going to switch gears a little bit here, and I'll go over to integration.
To your
Go
point,
ahead.
what has blown you away that, like, my God, I didn't think it could be done with low code, something that sophisticated? What have you seen any examples where you've been surprised?
Oh man, it's hard to say. Personally, I get more interested in, I would say I'm not that I'm not interested in business use cases, but they're not always the most like interesting to me, right? Like so a lot of people, their personal use cases or even like just office specific, like fun use cases are a little bit more interesting in terms of like the creativity that comes out of it. I mean, I've seen a million apps on order management and inventory management. Like, you can only impress me so much in terms of a design and process functionality. It doesn't bring a smile on my face, but I've seen people build apps for like managing like wedding RSVPs, and we do it for building, managing basically the build out process for our farm. Actually, I'll give you a good example. Over the summer, we had an intern here at the Austin office in our farm, and we built a creator application with a bunch of these, I don't know exactly what it's called, but they're like these sensors you put in the ground, they connect to like a Raspberry Pi, and all that data gets fed back into this creator application. We've got a dashboard for the farm that basically shows people, wherever they're stepping on, they can scan a little NFC tag at every row of the farm and know what plants are exactly there. Nice. And then they know, what does a ripe plant look like? What does a plant that shouldn't get picked look like? Is it too green? Is it too red? All the different components of it, nice. The time of season it's going to be there. It's a whole like farming management type thing. And then it has like a smart irrigation system. All that's being powered through the creator application. So I think that's not like a work example, but that's where I see like creativity and really cool stuff happening.
Absolutely. I thought you'd say somebody's created a restaurant app. Hey, what restaurants are open during the pandemic?
Yeah, that can be our next option here.
Because Google is not always
accurate
anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, small things like that, like I would say like fun examples always bring a bigger smile on my face than like the corporate example, I would say. But that's just, maybe I'm like desensitized to corporate examples at this point. I don't know. But yeah, so I'll switch gears a little bit and go into the integration piece real quick. And so on the integration piece, we've got, I'll just kind of walk through a little diagram of how it kind of works. We got data sources at the bottom. These are third-party systems or Zoho services that we have connectors for, custom services for like on-premise or cloud databases and things like that. We have this middle layer called UDS, which stands for our unified data service. This handles like all the throttling, the versioning, the rate limiting, permission sets, all that middleware for users. And all the user really needs to focus on is these components at the very top level. And so I'll walk through just a couple examples. Something like a cloud form lets you create a custom front end for a third-party service. So imagine you have like a cases module in a Salesforce CRM that you're using, but you don't like the cases interface of Salesforce website. And so maybe you need to make a mobile specific or a situation specific front end that just ports the data over to cases, but has a whole different UX feel to it. That can be like a cloud form for any third-party service. On the opposite of the spectrum, there's a lot of services out there that have data, but have terrible reporting capabilities. And so we kind of just flip the script on it. And the data exists in the third-party system. Maybe like you want some analytics on your Calendly appointments. What day is getting booked up the most? What type of meetings are you having the most? Any kind of visualization. Maybe Calendly they have the raw data, but they're not giving you the visual capabilities to actually see it in any sort of meaningful way. So we can create cloud reports that way and visualize data on top of third-party services that way. There's other things like related lists and actions, clicking a button fires off a trigger somewhere else, things like that. But broadly speaking, that cloud form and cloud report are kind of two sides of the same coin in terms of visualizing data or being a better front end for a third-party service, essentially. And so most people will create also these kinds of integration flows. And so this is like a multi-step flow that has decision trees where, an action happens in one application or file out for a bunch of different, steps in third-party applications. And I would say this has become a lot more standard. Before, we didn't really have this level of visual integration builders for multi-step workflows. And so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. What I really like, though, is actually our status dashboard. And so the hardest or the biggest pain point for integrations is not so much building the integration for the first place, but actually monitoring the integration. When an integration breaks, you don't really know it breaks oftentimes until 2 days later, the sales rep says, hey, I don't have any new leads. What's going on? Then you're like backtracking and figuring out, when did this problem happen? What was the last lead that was synced over? How do we figure it out? There's a whole like monitoring aspect that seems to be kind of neglected broadly from a lot of these integration platforms. And so we want to be able to see and make sure that how many successes and failures are we having? Really just advanced logging capabilities, if you will, re-executing failed attempts, more importantly, throttling at certain levels. If we go past the services rate limit, we know all the API limitations from every vendor we connect with. So we make sure we stay under it and we'll queue whatever actions need to happen down the line. But broadly speaking, this is actually the important part of an integration. Building is just the first step, but monitoring and making sure it's always working with alerts and notifications and stuff like that is, I would say, the unsung hero of a good integration. And the last piece I'll hit on here real quick is just from the analytics capabilities to round it out. And so on the analytics side of things, like I talked about before, a lot of people have reporting, not a lot of people have good business intelligence that happens here. And we kind of know the differences for it, right? We want to be able to drive predictive insights, create some kind of data stories, basic stuff like that.
Some dashboards as part of that.
Yeah, you got it. So we can build these data blended dashboards across multiple services, sales and help desk information. And then we get into a little bit more, I would say, advanced or analytical sides of things. So things like prediction analysis that can happen based on some sort of trend. We can do seasonal trends. A bunch of different AI models you can pick and choose your predictive analysis. We have alerts that happen based on anomaly detection or inventory alerts, things like that. Any kind of data point that exists outside of whatever predefined range. Things like a what if analysis, so we can slide this little profit slider back and forth and basically see what type of sales forecast can we expect based on our profit margin changing around, so you can dynamically generate it based on a bunch of hypotheticals. But really, I would say the capability that most of our business users are leveraging the most is conversational analytics. And this just helps anyone who's not a data scientist, not a real data BI type of person, be able to type in free text, get a guided conversation, see exactly the data and the rendering that they want it to. And most importantly, you'll see on the right-hand side, this chart information is being populated as well. And this helps someone who's not very technical understand how it's getting built, because otherwise we could just show the chart and black box the actual configuration, but the configuration will inspire somebody hopefully over time to understand how it was actually built, because that's equally important, not just relying on the conversation, but hoping you learn from the conversation as well. And so this is, blown away most people that have started using it. We have it in a couple of other products as well, but broadly speaking, people have the data in applications, but just don't know how to visualize it right. And configuring charts, I don't know if it's just me, but it's a nightmare and annoying, figuring out what's on what axis, what's the filters we're doing, what's the, different trend lines and guidelines and colors. I don't care about all that. I just want to be able to see the data and manipulate it a bunch of different ways to find out what is actually telling me the best story. And then once you've built out the dashboard you like, you can save it, throw it in whatever other page or component of a creator application you want to, and it works. It just kind of saves that chart in whatever format it is. And then actually, I'll lie to you, this is the actual last part I'll tell you about real quick, is really just around management capabilities. And so on the management side of things, we have app controls. And so as an app starts very small, and especially in citizen developer world, you don't really have any kind of development practices implemented for the developer because they're not really developers. And what I mean by that is you don't have any kind of staging and production environments. You don't really have any kind of audit logging. You don't have any kind of really just things that you would know that a developer would need, but not a business user who's building apps for the first time. And so you really got to have, we've introduced a new way to have this development staging production environment for changes. You can have different users added to different environments to kind of beta test new things you're rolling out and track changes, publish minor or major revisions, make sure there's no breakages in terms of data models or overlapping workflows, and just a whole full-blown lifecycle management system for it.
Do you have a taxonomy too? Because one of the risks with low risk is 18 different users will be building something similar, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's something, I'm going back to Lotus Notes days at PwC. We were so excited that every office would have 100 different applications, and they were basically the same in every office. So do you have some kind of a taxonomy to keep track of that?
I feel like you've been spying on our team meetings, Vinnie. So basically, yeah, we've got this whole system we've been working on. It's just not a part of this release yet. I'll give you a little bit of information that I can about it. Basically, the way it works is like every time a component is created, one, we already know a lot of details about the type of component based on just kind of all the different business apps we make. Oftentimes people are making entities like a customer entity or like an item entity. And based on all the other apps we know all the different attributes that go along with it and stuff like that. But also extending beyond that is the inter-business communication, because the larger the implementation or the organization, the more of exactly what you said happens. And so when someone is rebuilding an app that has either multiple components that seem similar to other apps within that same organization, we can alert them and basically say, hey, someone's already built something pretty similar to this. And it'll have this kind of matching system where, you know, the two people can talk together. And that's kind of where the in-platform collaboration happens as well, where one, we can figure out which one needs to be the master app or which one can get folded into the other. Are they really different use cases? If they are different use cases, then we really want to make very composable concepts. And so we'll have each entity as a composable item that can then get replicated across any application you want to build. So once you've defined a customer entity that links to some third-party, you know, CRM or whatever, then that entity can get dropped into every single app within the organization. So it's kind of like a mini marketplace for the organization itself. And then we'll also have our public marketplace that's available for everybody. But I think the mini marketplace within the organization is going to have a lot more traction because a lot of the things that are built are very organization specific. And, you know, people who are building these for the team or for their companies, it's all private IP, and we don't want to, you know, they may not want to publish it to the public marketplace. So let them have their own internal one that works pretty well. So I think that's going to be a really, really big thing going forward. We're just not quite there with this release. It'll be coming out later in the year.
Would that, the externally viewable listing, would that be part of a store? Are you thinking in an app store kind of model? Or
yeah, so we've already got like the Zoho marketplace, and that'll have, you know, apps that other developers have built on the creator platform that they leverage. Some work out, some work out better than others. On the creator front, you know, since a lot of the apps do need to be customized, most of the marketplace apps are kind of like templates and then kind of to go started. So a good developer would build a template and say, if you want to customize this template more for your need, reach out to me and I'll tweak it for you. And, you know, I'll get my services revenue that way and everyone's a winner. But at least this will give you an idea of what can be built and what my skills are as a developer. I would say it's rare to kind of see them as, you know, just take it from the marketplace and start using it right away because it meets all your needs. There's always going to be some things you want to, you know, turn off, turn on, just like any point product software. You got to be able to customize it first before you use it. So that's the way we kind of see the marketplace overall. And I'll just wrap with pretty much at the end of this, there's, like I said, I could spend days with you walking through everything that we have. This is a super high level of kind of just a lot of the different components that are there. I think in a couple of years, low-code platforms will have twice as many things on the screen in terms of everything that they're kind of getting their hands in and touching for an organization. The key is really for any low-code platform is the more capabilities you introduce, which you have to add more horizontal functionality, is it easy for people to use? And are you upskilling the people in order to build things that they previously thought they couldn't. We're basically just giving tools to people that a non-technical person is able to build something and is empowered to ultimately solve their own problems in a way that technology previously didn't afford them the capability to, or their technical know-how didn't give them the capability to. And so our goal is really just upskilling at the end of the day, making people build things that and take control of their problems and kind of solve them for ourselves. And that kind of just rounds out the overall, building these solutions essentially that encompass building an app, integrating something, and having some analytic capability to it. And then unified platform is key and underappreciated. Unified user management, unified governance, unified billing, unified data structures, unified connections, unified authentications, all that administrative stuff, having it unified across the board makes things just easier for an IT team to really have faith in that deployment rather than managing it from a multiple system perspective. And that kind of wraps up the entire thing, to be honest with you.
So this is going to be available right away.
You caught me here. March 3rd. March 3rd sounds right to me. Sure.
That's not just the announcement. It's going to be available March 3rd.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
We've had it with like our beta customers for a couple of months now, probably 6 months, give or take. But it'll be for new customers. We'll open it up on the 3rd. We'll usually let existing customers try things out first and provide their feedback before giving it out to everybody. So
pretty neat.
So
what's the initial customer excitement?
I think the biggest excitement is, or maybe the biggest reaction really is kind of like drinking from a fire hose. I think that's the experience most people have with Zoho overall. We just give you so much stuff and you got to be able to digest it somehow. And so typically the creator platform only included just the building an app capability. And so adding in integrations and analytics for existing customers, I think it's a little bit easier because they've already kind of mastered the building aspect or like how it all works. And we're just adding on functionality. For new customers, some of them will come in looking for analytic solutions. Some of them will come in looking just for integrations or just for building, and being able to like expand the use cases across and leveraging it all has been a big thing. So for us, like educational material, customer support, onboarding services, really just education in general has been a big thing for us. And all the questions that our existing customers have had have helped us kind of create a bunch of video and tutorial series and even one-on-one trainings that help them build better apps at the end of the day. Right now, I think we kind of look at this whole platform that we have right now, this version, as kind of technically it's our 6th version coming out, but I would say it's really like our version 2 in terms of this is the platform going forward that we're building on top of. And a lot of the new capabilities required this kind of unified solution approach in order to build the new things that we want to build. So when we add new features like AR and VR and assistant building and more complex things, we needed this foundation there in order to get to the next big release that we have later in the year in terms of new functionalities that'll be introduced.
Are you starting to see more partners attracted as a result of your partner maturing more?
Yeah, the partner maturity has been good. There's been a big, not a split, but I'd say, but we used to have mostly implementation partners, technical folks who just wanted to make development money, I guess, and resell licenses or whatever. But a big emerging market for our partners has been on the education front, like I was mentioning before, providing tailored courses for businesses of all different sizes and geographies in order to how to build better, providing more educational approach rather than them holding the development knowledge and just delivering a final solution to customers. And so I wouldn't say a split. Some people do both. I think the best partners do both. But ultimately their adoption has been good, especially I think a lot of the IT functions that they were maybe outsourcing to somewhere else or saying no to customers before in terms of what the platform could do. Now they're seeing that they can do a lot more of that development work in-house. And for some of these mid-market companies that even if you have an IT team, they might not have the bandwidth like I was talking about before. And so that partner will be that kind of outsourced bandwidth team that does advanced, let's say, creator work for the business users who are building apps in the platform. So it's not even the internal team working with the business user, it's the partner and the business user working together, and the IT team just manages it from a governance perspective and kind of oversees the project. We've kind of seen a lot of these kind of hybrid relationships working out.
Fantastic. Amazing what you covered in a short 20 minutes.
I mean, imagine if I had your ear for 20 hours, it would, it'd be a lot more, but
You
I could
know,
do it.
you'd lose me at that point.
Yeah, like I said, it's like a fire hose. I mean, yeah, training is really just a hard thing. There's so many things. It's like any low code platform. The best example I like to give people is kind of like, it's like getting a 1,000-piece box of Legos for the first time. And it's like, cool, well, these are a lot of pieces, but I don't know what to do with it exactly. And then once you start seeing other things that have been built with Legos, you're like, oh, I have all the tools here. I just need to put them in a certain way, and I can build that too. And I think that's really just kind of low code platforms development in general, right? Like you can give someone a programming language and say, go build, but like, that's not gonna, you're not gonna be able to build if you haven't seen things built before. So that's kind of where these like marketplace and template apps and education pieces come in place, because you need to draw inspiration from somewhere and see these apps in action and be like, oh yeah, like I know I have all the pieces in place. I just need to put them together properly in order to build what it is that I want to build.
One final question, actually a follow-up to what you just said. If somebody just wants to license platform licenses, would you do that, or is it going to be still application-centric licensing?
Maybe I don't understand the question exactly.
What if somebody said, hey, look, I love the platform. I don't want to buy Zoho One or any of the applications.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it's included in Zoho One, of course, but if people want to just buy Creator specifically, they do. Creator is kind of like a weird area in the Zoho ecosystem. About like 45% of Creator customers only use Creator and don't use any other Zoho product.
Okay. So
because they'll be, connecting to third-party services, something like that. Then there's like a 40% that use multiple Zoho apps that, integrate and they're in the Zoho ecosystem. But that 40% of chunk, they don't either care or they don't know about other Zoho apps, and they're happy with their environments that they have for their other business solutions. They're just using it for development, agnostic of everything else. So we'll have both options, Zoho One, standalone, whatever people prefer.
Great. Thank you so much.
No problem at all. Always a pleasure talking to you, Vinnie.